G'day. I've been meaning to do this video for a long time, although it's one that I think I kept finding a reason or an excuse not to do perhaps. I was speaking to someone online last night and they asked me a question that's a question I knew one day someone would ask, and it's one of those questions you hope it'd be another 105 years before anyone thought to ask it. But it's been asked nevertheless, and that question was, do I ever look back and still know the me that I once was? And it's a question that, of course, the answer is obviously yes. You never forget from whence you came. You never forget the events that shaped the life you might still live today. I know I certainly didn't, and don't ever plan on forgetting those events. For me, the journey backwards today is almost as if it's a reflection of, well, I guess it is, it's a reflection of someone I used to know. And I kind of like her now. And maybe that's because now I understand her. Back then, of course, she was just an angry, arrogant mess of, I'm going to get you before you get me kind of gal. But when I look at her today, or the other side of me, see, I even speak about it in the other sense. But what it is we never cease to be all of who we are. There's good parts about who we are, and there's bad parts, and there's wrong parts, and there's right parts. But at the end of the day, there's a reason many of us take a left turn when most other people were taking right turns. I found in my journey, the people that were taking the right turns had a mum and a dad who were on the page being parents. They were showing them what love, what respect, what happiness, and I guess at the end of it, what childhood was all about. Whereas we, the victims of child abuse, we don't get that start to life, so the start is corrupted and the spirit of the child is forever broken. And then we stumble and we fumble, and as we grow up, the myriad of occasions arise where we become someone when we go to our quiet places that we don't even like, yet we're fighting, almost demanding for other people to like us. Well, that's how it was for me. And I wrote a very long time ago a clip called Letter to the World from a Child Abuse Survivor. And that clip took me a really long time to do. And it wasn't that I was still angry. It was that I was angry at still having to talk because no one still listened. No one today really listens, because if the powers that be were listening, well, I guess we wouldn't be having this conversation. There'd be no need for me to come out and answer publicly why I believe, A, I have a right to have an opinion on the subject of child abuse and the remnants thereafter. I shall say now at the beginning of this clip, I am not an academic, nor do I wish to be an academic. I did my PhD the right way for where I am today and for what I want to do today. I sat in the gutter with the person who had a drug problem and I asked them were they okay. I put my arm around the lady sitting in the park with a brown bottle, and she said no one gives a damn. And you can imagine me knowing that she's telling the truth, but all I could say was, I hope someday someone will. I know my someone was a long way off in those days. In those days, my arrogance was my attitude, and my attitude was, yeah, you think you're going to get me? Watch me get you first. And that's the way I lived, on the back foot with everybody, never believing nor trusting, never giving anyone a glimpse at who I was. Oh dear, I learnt many years later, how could I have given anyone a glimpse of who I was? I had certainly no clue. I knew the facade, I knew the chameleon. I knew that I can be any damn thing you want me to be, because that kept the peace. Then the attitude grew as the arrogance grew as the older I got. And that's a pretty dangerous cocktail, because when we add arrogance to a broken soul, because we believe that, well, I believe from then, what are you going to do to me that's not already been done? And that was where I realised I had no fear. And fear is definitely something we all need to feel whole. But for more years than I care to remember, I feared nothing but the unknown. I had been beaten, I had been abused, I'd been shot and I'd been stabbed, and I was still getting back up going, well, is that the best you got? Because here I am today, and the reason for this video is to take you back a little further, because when I say to you on an online forum, or when I answer your email and tell you, I know what you're talking about, I want you to believe from my heart, I do know what most of you are talking about. Of course, I don't know it all. I've never professed to. But what I know well, because not only have I lived it and survived it, I've written and written and written on the subject to world leaders, to politicians, to people on the street, to join with me and the people who believe in the fight like I do. My incredible friends over at Fighters Against Child Abuse Australia. So I'm going to take you back to when it all began for me, the journey where life as I thought I might have known it began. I was 9 years old and my abuse was barbaric. It was constant and it was cruel. Where it began. As I said before, I was 9 years old when my abuse began. I was a fragile little girl who, the day before, thought I was the luckiest kid alive. Sadly, a lot can change in a day, and life as I knew it. I went from believing I was a pretty little thing who had everything to laugh about and not a care in the world. I used to love to look in the mirror as my mum braided my hair, because she would tell me how beautiful I was. And you know, I believed her. And then one thing, one event, so catastrophic that it changes everything. Even the vision that stares back at you from the mirror, it shows it's no longer beautiful. It's broken. It's undefinable. It's definitely unexplainable. All you know as a little child is that although you're being told it's right, it feels so very, very wrong. And I think that's the sadness of child abuse. I'm not going to linger on the abuse itself. It was vicious. It was unrelenting. And it forever altered the person that I would one day become. Growing down the pathways and looking ahead, trying never to look back, yet living in the vortex of the past every minute, every moment, every second of every day. And it's lonely and it's isolating, because who you are, you have no clue. Who you want to be, you really don't care. You just want to escape the madness and the mayhem that lives within the broken mind of a child. Excuse me. A child's mind that's fractured. A child's mind that's distorted with lies and with pain, perpetrated by evil people. Evil people sometimes call themselves parents. It's their facade, it's the face they wear that society says, well, isn't that a lovely family? What would they know, most of them? I was shipped off to the hospital when I was 13 to have the mess my abuser had made rebuilt. My doctors sent me home. Can you imagine a doctor sending a child home today? My husband and I went in search of the people who should have stood up for me, only to find that doctor lived every day of his life And when I finally caught up with him again, although he was a very old man by this stage, he told me he'd never forgotten my eyes, because back then 13-year-old children didn't walk around with dead eyes. That was also the time that I learnt there were things out there that doctors could give you to turn the pain off. And that's a terrible thing for a child to learn, how to stop the memories, how to stop the voices, how to stop life in essence. So I learned that there was medication for many things that the doctors were only too happy to give you. And it stopped the pain, the physical pain and the emotional pain. So life travelled on for me, and school became the place I went to not only to learn, but to vent my aggression. Back then, if I could have known what I know today, that calm is a bitch and what we reap is really what we sow in this life, I would be anything other than me. No matter what that meant I had to do to escape me and the mirror that told me my worthlessness and my ugliness and my inability to be anything other than the monster that lived in my mind, created by the abusers who cared not for the child that once was, who cared even less for the adolescent I'd become. But by then it was, well, I didn't care what they thought. I'd given up caring what anybody thought. I'd given up wanting to impress. And then one day I woke up and realised, if I don't start playing this life thing the way everybody says I should, what's the point? I couldn't go back and change it, and I certainly couldn't live in the mind I was living. So back to the doctor I would go, and the pain would be so bad that he would prescribe the same medication. That medication became what I thought was my solace, became my nemesis. Yes, it stopped the voices that continually reminded me of my worthlessness, that continually reminded me of each and every mistake I'd ever made. And then I would go in search to make the last mistake better. And of course, I would just make another mistake. Because you can't ask of people what you can't ask of yourself. I was screaming and I was pleading for someone just to listen. Because I figured back then, if I could make someone understand why I became dependent on prescription medication, why I felt the need to be anyone but me, why I wanted to run to the furthest part of the earth just to escape me. And I ran and I ran, and then I ran some more. And every time I arrived at where I'd run to, no matter who the facade said I was, the minute the quiet times came, I was still me, Cassie Kay, the broken and battered soul, still living the pain and the anguish of another woman's life. But that was when I made my first discovery that whoever coined the phrase, you can run but you can't hide, I have to think they may have been an abuse survivor, because that's the thing. You can't outrun you. You can outrun your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, your husband or your wife, but you can't outrun you. Who you are is all of you. And whether your abuse has led you to the path of drugs, alcohol, crime, whatever it is, you still can come back from it. You still can find the you that's buried under the masses of everything you've ever been told about you. You go from an abused child to an adult everyone's got an opinion on people who believe that they know all about why you are and who you are. They haven't got a clue, because I know no one ever asked me that question. I know I hurt people growing up that professed to care about me. And for years, the guilt of what I'd done to them ate me alive. And then one day I sat down and thought, I am but one. I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a sister, I'm an aunt, I'm a friend. But wait a minute, I'm forgetting someone. I am me, and no one cared about me. No one asked about me. So I figured everyone, my entire life must have been right. I was worthless, and so it really didn't matter. I figured then, if I didn't prove them wrong, I would one day leave this earth, a byproduct of abuse, bitterness and anger. And that's just something I couldn't give them. They had taken from me more than they ever had a right to take. But now I was an adult, and was I going to give them permission to keep ruling the essence of who I was? Well, I found a way to say, no, they're not going to. The man I call my soulmate said, it's time to kick him to the curb. I was lucky. Someone cared. That same someone encouraged me to never ever stop speaking again. To never ever back down from what I believed in. He taught me that when I'm right, I'm normally on the money. And when I'm wrong, sometimes I'm right then too. I admit I'm opinionated, and I admit that I have plenty to say. But you'll never find me speaking on things that I haven't lived or that I haven't survived. I want everyone to know that I was once that broken soul, and I've learnt now that what was once broken can be mended. To mend, we've got to admit all the wrongs. We've got to admit all the mistakes. And then we've got to own them. We can own them at times justifiably if we follow ourselves back from whence we came. I'm going to leave this video here because I'm going to do a series of them. But this is the first one to just let you know that when you get an email from me or when you read something I've written, I just want you to know it's the truth. I leave you with peace and with hope. Until next time, be good to yourselves and each other, and always keep your children safe. See ya.